Critics of anti racism or anti wokeness, will say, so a couple of people lose their jobs, rightly or wrongly, or they were racist. Donald McNeil at the New York Times, an old reporter who used the N word, trying
In
to
reference.
clarify a
Right.
statement on a class trip in Peru for high school students. So it's already, I'm like, wow, this is taking place in a Philip K. Dick universe in an alternate
Yeah.
reality. But, he got cashiered for that. But you know what? He deserved to go. And it's not, is that too high a price to pay for a kind of cleansing moral purity? What are the consequences of this kind of electism?
Yeah, the problem is that it's not just a few things. That's what a lot of people were saying, say in July, August, but it's been a while. These Don McNeil stories are now legion. And the idea that he deserved to lose this job is not something that a critical mass of people would agree with. It's
Mhm.
the elect who think that he should lose his job. And what's going on is that the elect get their way because we're all so deeply afraid of being called racist. It's a reign of terror. The reason that a person can get fired for some minor transgression like that nobody would ever have blinked at or would have given him a smack on the hand about just 10 minutes ago, is because nobody wants to be called a racist on social media by these people. If there was no Twitter, there'd be no elect. Part of this is technology. You don't want to be called elect you don't want to be called racist on Twitter. It used to be that maybe they would call you a racist in a letter to the editor, but that didn't have the power that Twitter has. And so the problem is that this fear means that people lose their jobs for no moral reason. It means that educational institutions are being turned upside down into these anti-racism academies that don't give people a real education and excommunicate anybody who questions it. That's a serious problem right there. So some people will say, does this really matter? A few reporters lose their job, whatever. Some schools are changing. That's not a question that anybody concerned with the heart of a society would ask. Yes, this is a real problem. It's vastly transforming our whole intellectual, moral, and even artistic culture. And what bothers me so much about it is that it's mendacious. It's all about fear. It's not that these people are convincing most of society of these very narrow, extremist, and self-indulgent views that this hyper wokeism has. It's that everybody's just afraid of them. And I think it's time that we stop being so afraid.
Who is driving this? And, as with most kind of vague social forces, it's not, there isn't somebody cracking the whip, in the rider's seat or something in the driver's seat, but who is driving this? Is it a series of black elites? Is it white elites? Is it some mix? At one point, you invoke at your Substack the phrase, and I'm going to butcher it because I cannot pronounce words very well, but Ken DeAngelonianism,
Yeah.
which is a portmanteau of Ibram Kendi and Robin DiAngelo, a
Hmm.
black, a black scholar and a white scholar.
Hmm.
Who's doing this? Is it white elites? Is it black elites? Is it just elites? What's going on?
It's them. And so part of the idea of Kendi Angelonianism is that it is that white person and that black person. I hate to say this, but the elect starts with black people. It's a way of thinking about race that acquired a certain hold on especially academics, some artists, and a lot of media people after about 1966. This is when segregation, like outright obvious bigotry and and disfranchisement, that's over. And so you have to have a whole new kind of conversation about what the problems are. And frankly, it's then that a certain kind of black person devotes themselves to exaggerating, pretending that nothing really changed, pretending that black people are more powerless than they are. That used to be a type. And if you were
Who
white, it was
who
easy to
who's
think.
an early who's an early incarnation
That
of that?
starts with Stokely Carmichael. That starts with
Mhm.
the people yelling Black Power and not really being quite sure what it even meant. And a lot of people look back on that era, and I think partly because of the fashions and partly
Mhm.
because the music was good, they think that that was somehow significant, that that was special. But you have to ask, what has Black radicalism done to help Black America overall, other than be kind of a fashion statement, other than lend some inspiring speeches? Huey Newton was very interesting. Stokely Carmichael was very interesting. Amiri Baraka was very interesting.
Mhm.
But Black America's victories have been in spite of them, not because of anything that they did. Nevertheless, you had that kind of person. And what this means is that the Ibram Kendi type has been with us for about 50 years, but it used to be that he was somebody who, got a doctorate from somewhere and wrote some books, and there you went. But now we have the D'Angelo type, and she's not as young as a lot of the whites who are doing this. Electness among white people tilts young, although there are people who are her age and older who have always thought this way, who now have an influence that they didn't have before. And so white fragility, a year ago, I'd heard of it. I wasn't going to read it. And I don't think I was alone in that. That changed immediately because of this racial reckoning. And so it's a collaboration, unwittingly, between a certain kind of black radical who I, with all due understanding, think had more to do with posturing than actually creating change in America as we know it. That's not, they didn't do it on purpose, but I don't see them as important as some historians do. But then you have a certain kind of white fellow traveler. That cocktail, it's another one of these cocktails,
Mhm.
that is what's driving all of this. Whites who have founded their sense of purpose on showing that they're not racist and teaching other people not to. And black people who, because it can be hard to find your comfort zone and to have a sense of purpose for any human being, is a kind of black person who lives to paint white people as the enemy, because therefore you are a noble victim. The noble victim complex, that's Homo sapiens. Those together, when you have black people with that problem and white people with their problem, is the elect. And boy, can that be powerful, because those people like to call other people racists. And once there's social media, that can be really, really scary, unless you're somebody who has the disease of not minding being despised. That's not most people.
How so how do you say it is, kind of time to push back on all of this and to, to argue with it and confront it or engage it. What's to be done? What are the best ways to do that?
Well, the truth is, and Nick, I'm working on having a more comprehensive answer to that, because all of this
Mhm.
happened so very quickly and we're all leading lives. And I want to be able to give counsel that ordinary people who need to keep their jobs can follow. But the truth is, we have to understand that you cannot reason with people like this. And it's very rare that you teach somebody out of their religion. And this is a religion. And so to try to talk these people down doesn't work. All they know is that you're a racist, and that's all you're going to get. So the idea is not to try to have a dialogue with them about these sorts of issues. You have to just shut down. But I think that we simply need to start telling people like this no. And the question is not, how do you stop them from calling you a racist on social media? You don't. That's what they're going to do. And it's time to start letting them do it and going on about our business, and having our fellows around us, having our friends around us, and just making these sorts of people realize that screaming that you're a racist isn't going to get them what they want. They've learned that that strategy works, and so they're going to keep using it, and they're never going to consider that it might not be the most humane or even constructive way of doing things. But these are human beings, and all of us have that element. There's a Lord of the Flies element in these people, although they would never recognize it in themselves. And so we need to start telling them no. And I am working on how to get people to actually consider doing that, because I get at least 3 emails a day from people who are scared to death of the elect and understand that these demands don't make any sense and are destructive, but they need to keep their jobs, or they don't want to get screamed at. They have children, etc. Nevertheless, something needs to be done, because these people will not stop, and they're not open to reason. I just think my analogy is with sharks. I'm told, I don't know if this is true, but I'm told that you can bop a shark on the nose. I do not mean violence against these people in any way, but with these sorts of people, I think if you just said, no, I'm not a racist, and I don't care whether you put it on Twitter or not, and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and keep looking them in the eye and don't apologize. If you do that enough with these people, they'll back down. But it has to be enough people doing it that a subconscious group awareness emerges among people like this, that just yelling dirty names is not going to change the world the way they're hoping.